أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشافي نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته طيبين طاهرين معصومين صادقين. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The subject that we're going to discuss tonight, this workshop that we're going to have, is a very, very important workshop because the subject affects each and every one of us. Whether we want it to affect us or not, it affects us. And that is the digital lifestyle. For any of you who have been in seminars or workshops with me, the thing that you will always notice is that I don't like talking at you. I like conversing with you. And because this is a workshop, my input is not as important as your input. So we're going to have a lot of time to ask questions and see exactly where we are as far as Islam and technology is concerned. So when it comes down to technology, one of the things that we can all agree on is technology moves fast. It's ever changing. There's always something different. There's something always new. Sometimes new isn't exactly new, but technology has an addictive type of process. How many of you guys in here have a smartphone? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you guys have an iPhone? Good. How many of you guys have the Samsung? How many of you guys have some off-brand? That's a joke. It's not off-brand. So, the question is, how many of you guys have the iPhone 4 who have iPhones? You use that one now. Alhamdulillah. How many of you guys have the iPhone 5? Very good. Alhamdulillah. How many of you guys have the iPhone 6? MashaAllah. How many of you will be going out to get the iPhone 7? Don't be ashamed. We all try to hold out. But as soon as it comes out, it's almost like, man, there's something wrong with my phone. It's just not moving fast enough. It's not doing for me what I need for it to do. This is the way that technology moves. It's always pushing us in a different direction. It always gives us something that we want. The thing about technology is that it never ends. When I was a kid, we used to have a video game, and the first video game I had was an Atari. Actually, it wasn't an Atari. Now I'm gonna tell my age. My head does that anyway. But there was a game called Pong. Anybody know Pong? Boop, boop, boop. Now Pong, when we had Pong, man, we thought Pong was the best thing ever. And the only thing you could do with Pong is there was a little twisty thing, and you twist it, and you hit this dot, and it would go across to the other side. We would play Pong forever. It was fun for us. It was okay for us. But how many of the kids today would be interested in Pong? Then we moved to the Atari. Asteroids, Centipede, and we was okay with that. That lasts for a very long time, the Atari. Then we had Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers. Now, I tell you, there was something about the Nintendo that began to change things. We would play Asteroids forever on Atari. We would play Centipede for as long as we could. We would play Donkey Kong for as long as we could, but after a while, we would get up, we would leave, we would go outside, we would play, we'll come back, and we'll start the game again. We weren't addicted to these games. We played them, we had fun with them, we walked away. How many of you guys know about Super Mario Brothers? How many of you spent hours on Super Mario Brothers trying to pass all the boards? See all the hands? Super Mario Brothers became addictive. You played and you played and you played and you played and you played until you ended the whole game. That was good. You thought it was good. But after you finished the game, how many of you went back and played Super Mario Brothers like you used to after you completed all the boards? You were finished. So the people who were making these games, they began to see that there is something psychological going on with the games and people being addicted to playing these games. After you got to a certain level, you would get bored with the game and you would leave. As technology continued to move, the technology began to get better. The games began to become more realistic. When you get into games like Tecmo Bowl, I know most of you guys don't know much about Tecmo Bowl. You're scaring me, man. But the other games that were there, you're playing them and they're becoming more realistic. You have the war games that are becoming realistic. You have the sports games that are becoming realistic. But in order to play these games, in the beginning, you had to play these games either at an arcade or some kind of game console, right? So if you weren't home, you couldn't play the game. If you weren't at the arcade, you couldn't play the game. But still, you were becoming addicted to these games. Technology said, we want you to play more games. We want you to spend more time at doing this. So now, how many of you guys played Tetris? Tetris is a beautiful game. I love Tetris. Hadn't played it in a while because it takes too much of my time. But Tetris was a game that they put on your phone. Even when you had the oldest of the smartphones, one of the first games they put on the phone was Tetris. And you found that with Tetris, you played it, but it wasn't something that held you. Now, on your cell phones, how many of the games that are interactive, the soccer games, the football games, the war games, the mind games, all of these different games that are on these telephones, how many of you spend time playing these games on your phone? How many of you guys play Candy Crush? How many of you guys have ever played Candy Crush? Okay, so people who've never played Candy Crush, put your hands up. Never played Candy Crush. Alhamdulillah. Subhanallah. The reason why I asked is because the makers of Candy Crush, they're very smart. Because when you first started playing Candy Crush had a level to where once you reached that level, it was over. But they found that we're going to make these boards just a little more difficult, and we're going to give you the option of getting more lives. Watch the psychology. People would stop playing Candy Crush when they only had one life left. They'll put the game down, so what? So they could build up time, and they'll have more than one life, so they could pass the board. People said, man, that's okay. But the people at Candy Crush, they did something sweet. They said, okay, attach your credit card to the Play Store, and you can buy men for 99 cents, $1. People were going broke trying to pass the boards on what? Candy Crush. Why? Because they were addicted to the games. And now, everything is beginning to become more digitalized. I was just talking about games then because the games, we can all identify with the games. But technology isn't going to stop, and we are moving into what we're going to call a digital lifestyle. Everything is going to become digitalized. It affects us in so many ways because when most people talk to you about the internet, they tell you, hey, look, don't watch the haram, right? Don't look at the haram things. But how many people are talking about don't disrespect people? How many people are talking about how much time you're spending on these things? How many people are talking about the fact that in just a few years, there will be very few things that you could get into in life that will not be digitalized? How many of you guys heard of the Google glasses? Awesome glasses. You put them on and it's like it becomes this virtual world. This is where we're going. Things are going to become virtual. Now what I have a few notes or whatnot that I want to go over, and I want to show you some things, and I want to show you where we're going to be. Everyone knows where we are, but I'm going to show you where we're going to be. In the beginning, the video games I was talking about, video games imitated life. The more realistic the video game could be to real life, the better the video game was. But right now in the movie industry, you have movies like Transformers. You have a movie like the Marvel Comics. These movies are now doing what? Imitating video games. For those of you who have children and your children were born after 2000, I'm not going to get too technical with this thing, but the way that their frontal cortex, the way that they begin to process information has changed. And it's changed because of the digital world. For your children that are 2-3 years old, you have small children. How many of you know that your little child can work your iPhone or your iPad better than you can? They want to see a movie, they go right to it. They want to see a game, they go right to it. They want to watch something on YouTube, they go right to it. This is because their minds are processing things very differently than ours did because of this age of technology. What we're going to look at in a little while longer is that in this digital lifestyle, we're going to have to ask ourselves, how do we as Muslims interact and survive in this digital lifestyle? For those of you who are parents and those of you who are young people, for the parents first, how many of you guys have parental controls on your children's cell phones? How many of you guys know that you could put parental controls on your children's cell phones? If you don't have parental controls on your kids' cell phones, get with me later, and I'm going to send you a link so that you can get this spyware to put on your children's things. Why? Because the internet is a very, very dangerous place. It has a goodness about it, but it also has a badness about it. See, when you're raising your children and you're teaching them how to interact with other people, you tell your young men, when you see the young ladies walking by, you do what? Lower your gaze. What do you tell your children about what they see on the internet? In the real world, if a woman walked by and she didn't have many clothes on, or if a man walked by and he didn't have very many clothes on, we have the tendency to turn away because there's a sense of shame there. But what happens when you watch things on the internet? What happens when you watch things on the television? When there's a naked scene, how many people are turning away from it? How many people are actually thinking that, hey, you know, this is haram for me to look at? It's not about all the time what you look at, as much as it is, how long are you actually looking at this particular thing? If you continuously look at something that you're not supposed to look at, it becomes easier and easier and easier for you to look at it, watch it, see it. It doesn't bother you anymore. In the digital world, you don't see any harm in it. But what eventually happens is that after you leave this digital world and you go out into the real world and you see people that don't have on proper attire, what happens to your shame after a while? It begins to leave. Many people say, you know, well, I could give this thing up anytime. If you're a person who likes television, nobody's going to ban television. That's not going to happen. But if you like television and you like particular shows, nowadays they give you the option of doing binge watching. You guys know what binge watching is? Some people watch a whole season of a particular show in one sitting. Sometimes that takes 8 to 12 hours. During that time, how productive are you with doing your regular work? How productive are you in taking care of your family? How productive are you in serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And it doesn't matter what you watch. It doesn't matter what you do. It takes you away. How many of you guys find yourself on social media every once in a while debating Islam? Anyone? MashaAllah. When you're debating Islam, this is the digital world. Sometimes you get in there and you go for hours debating. While you're debating for those hours, how many times do you actually stop and say, hey, it's time for Salah? I got to make my point. Especially if you're dealing with some Salafi or one of these idiots, you get caught into it. And I'm going to prove them wrong, and you have to love Ahlul Bayt. And all of a sudden, it's 12:30. Salah is in. And you're going through. I have plenty of time. Sun doesn't go down until 5. You look up, and it's already time for Maghrib. Why does this happen? It is because this technology is becoming more and more addictive to you. When you sit down at the table, how many of you guys actually sit down at the table to eat with your families for dinner? Of all of you who sit down at your table to eat for dinner, how many of you allow cell phones at the table? How many people are looking at the cell phones when they're looking at eating dinner? I've gone to places, I've gone to restaurants, and I'll stand up on the outside and I will take pictures of people eating together. And everyone at the table is doing this. Where's the conversation? The conversations are no longer between people. The conversation is about what's on that screen. That's the technology. The thing that is becoming dangerous is that you're interacting with this technology. When this technology leaves from this form on the phone and it becomes virtual reality, how are you going to be able to walk away then? How many of you guys know that binge watching is now labeled as a disorder? How many of you guys know that binge gaming is now a disorder. Do you know how dangerous binge gaming is? In Japan, right now, and you could go to Shaykh Google, he'll hook you up. Google clinics for game addiction in Japan, and you'll have all of these hits come up for clinics for these kids in Japan who are actually whose lives are actually totally controlled by gaming. Here in America, a few years ago, and even up to today, there were a few people who died playing games. You know why? Because they didn't want to get up from the console of playing games. So what these kids did was, they said, I'm going to get me a 5-gallon bucket. I'm going to put a board over it. I'm going to cut a hole in it so I don't have to get up to go use the restroom. Now, for those of you who know, if you sit down for a long period of time, your blood doesn't circulate the way that it's supposed to circulate, and your blood begins to clot. Many people have died while they were sitting down playing those games because they are living a digital life, and they're living a digital life that is unhealthy for them. As Muslims, what will our digital life look like? What should that digital life look like? Our digital life should be one of control, where we control the content that we see, and we control the amount of time that we use this type of digital media. Sometimes you have to know when to say when. It's addictive like drugs and alcohol. It's so addictive that people have gotten in so many accidents because they can't put the cell phone down from not just texting now, but from gaming too. I've actually seen kids try to drive and play some game. Hey, look, pull over, I'll drive. It's okay. You can play your game, but I'm not going to ride with you while you're playing this game. Why? Because they are addicted to this digital world. And because of that, as Muslims, we have to start now and making our plans. The first plan that we have to make is, if you're on that digital world, what is the purpose for you getting on the digital world? How many of you guys read the Quran every day? It's not enough hands. How many of you guys use your cell phone every day? You know there's an app on your cell phone with the Quran, right? And for those of you who are too busy to read it, you know you can actually just push play and the Quran will play for you. How many of you guys take time to listen to Islamic lectures on your cell phones? How many of you do it once or twice a week? MashaAllah. If you're going to use this digital world, it's very difficult for us to go to places like Salatul Jummah. Sometimes it's hard for us to get over to Dua Kamal. Sometimes it's hard for us to make it to Dua Tawasul. But if we use this digital lifestyle and plug into Islam, then we can better ourselves using this technology. What lets us know that the digital lifestyle is not a bad lifestyle, we just have to control it. And controlling it takes a whole lot of power. Controlling it takes a whole lot of discipline. But if you're not plugged into Islam in your daily life, period, then what will make you plug into the Islamic digital life? It's impossible. In order to be able to control that digital world, you must control, I pray, Salatul Asub or Fajr, every day. I pray I pray at the times I'm supposed to pray. I read Quran. I listen to Quran. I read something about Islam. I tune into different things. Why? Because the more plugged in you are to Islam, the more you pray, the more you read Quran, the more you read on the lives of Ahlul Bayt, the stronger it builds your taqwa. Why is this going to be important? Because this God consciousness, having the understanding of what our prophet said, worship God as though you can see him, with the understanding that you will never see him, but he will always see you. It builds this thing up to where you're always thinking, Allah sees what I do. So now when you're on this digital world, what are you doing? You're thinking now, oh, I can't watch this scene. So instead of you watching this scene, this bad scene, you turn away from it. And better yet, inshallah, after a while, you'll stop watching those things that you're not supposed to watch anyway.